Hello, hello, Crystal Palace. Welcome to the Upper Norwood Library Hub's Library Lunch. This is a place to share positive and useful local information, find out about our lovely community in a bit more depth, and also try and keep us entertained and connected during this time. So I'm really delighted to introduce my guest today, who is George Arvidson, who is a singer and actor and is going to be involved with the Upper Norwood Library Hub shortly. So George, it's lovely to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, such a pleasure. Tell us a bit about you and your background.
Well, I'm originally from Colorado, a place called Lakewood, Colorado in the United States. I moved to the UK about 6 years ago to go to drama school. I did a year up in Scotland at the Royal Conservatoire, and then I've been working in the UK professionally since then. And before that, I worked in the United States for a little bit in Colorado and Maine and New York and a couple of other places. So I've been doing this for about 10 years altogether, I would say.
Cool. What led you into this career?
That's a good question. I think as a kid, I was always very much so a little thespian, if you will, and I think my mother saw that and recognized that in me and really encouraged that and allowed me to go to those theater clubs in school and those, dance groups, even though, I was the only boy in my dance studio, but she was there making sure that I was doing what I wanted to do. And so I was really lucky. And then when I was in high school, I decided that I think I was going to give it a go. So why not? So I applied to do music and theater in university and at drama school. And I think I had a pretty lucky break as far as being able to study and move to the UK with it. So it was never an option to do anything else for me, really.
Wow. Well, I mean, it must have taken, from an outside point of view, a lot of bravery to be the only boy in a dance class. It's awesome that you had that kind of support and encouragement early on. Really cool.
Yeah, I feel very lucky. I was very empowered by both my mother and my stepdad, who really just let me know always that whatever I wanted to do, whatever made me happy was the most important thing. Mm-hmm. They were both teachers, and I think they both saw the importance of that. And I feel very lucky, that I had that early on in my life. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, fab. Tell us a bit about what you've done in the UK. What kind of shows and things?
Since moving over here, I've done mostly theater. I worked at my first job out of university was at an incredible repertory theater company called Pitlochry Repertory Theatre, which is in Pitlochry, Scotland.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's as many theaters are right now. It's undergoing incredible hardship. Almost the entirety of their audience space comes from Edinburgh and Glasgow, and comes up and is based around the tourism industry in that part of Scotland and Highland Perthshire. But it was the most incredible place for me after I finished drama school, because like many of the actors of an older generation, training in rep after you finish drama school often feels like the real education, because you're playing numerous different roles in numerous shows at the same time, doing different shows in a day over a 8-month period of time, say.
Amazing amount of flexibility and stuff needed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a way to, quote, cut your teeth, if you will. And there's no tears allowed, and you just have to make sure that you get on with it and get the job done. I think it was a really valuable experience. And I think repertory theater in the UK is something that we don't have in the US, and I think is an incredible gift that exists over here.
Yeah, you must learn very quickly to just whatever happens, whatever might go wrong or anything, you just have to keep going, don't you? And it must be an amazing way to just get used to that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a totally different thing because after I finished that contract, I moved into what was essentially major commercial musical theater and West End musical theater, and it was a completely different ball game. where you're no longer doing several different shows a couple times a week. You're now part of a massive machine that requires you to deliver at 95 to 100% 8 times a week. But I don't think that I would have been able to do that if I hadn't gone through the reps experience.
And I guess on one show for maybe months at a time, rather than several shows all at the same time that are constantly changing. It's a really different experience. Yeah. So what else have you done then? Which West End musicals have you been involved in?
I did the West End production of Evita at the Phoenix Theatre back in 2017. I toured with that as well, the international tour and the European tour. And then I was lucky enough to sort of move into the television and screen a little bit more after that, and doing some work with the BBC, some for Cuckoo, and doing some voice recording work for Audible, Amazon, and doing some of their audio series, particularly Space Race is one of them, and a couple of biopics as well. And then Hollywood film that is currently playing in the States, Australia, and most of Europe, but not the UK for some reason. And then I was lucky enough to join the 2019 European and UK tour of Les Mis last year. Actually, exactly a year ago today was when we started rehearsing for that. And so I did that until March, when the whole world shut down. So,
wow. So you were literally in the middle of the tour.
Yeah. Actually, almost exactly in the middle of the tour. Six months into a 12-month contract.
Wow. So what happened?
Well, it was a very surreal experience. We were doing the production in Norwich, which is an incredible city and a wonderful place to do theater. And I really enjoyed touring there so much. And I was, we'd heard about this as we were leaving Switzerland, actually, because we had just been in Switzerland in Zurich. And as we arrived in Norwich to start, we heard that the theater in Switzerland had closed down due to the coronavirus. And we kind of were looking at each other going, is there something the Swiss know that we don't know? Should we be more concerned? And then as things started kicking off, there was a massive concern. Everybody kind of looking at each other like, what's going to happen? Are we going to close down? And then people started getting ill. And that was concerning as well. And I actually contracted coronavirus during that period of time. And I ended up on Sunday, which is our day off, I just was sort of bedridden. I couldn't really get out of bed. And I was thinking, well, this is not an ideal situation, and I can't smell or taste anything. I don't think I should go to work tomorrow. At the time, that wasn't part of the government guidelines, but I just thought this is something that is not a usual cold. So the next day I called in on Monday, and I said, listen, I'm so sorry. I've never called in sick before, but I'm going to call in sick because I don't know if this is what it is. And my friend, the dance captain, was very kind and said, of course, I understand completely. And then I got an email about an hour later, 2 hours later, saying, we've canceled tonight's show. And that's when the lockdown happened, was that night. And then I stayed in Norwich for the next 2.5 weeks until I was symptom free, and then was able to leave. So it was a very, very strange time, as you can imagine.
Wow, you've really had the experience from the inside in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Wow. So what have you been doing for the last few months? What was cancelled?
Eating biscuits mostly. I've been lucky enough to be in Wiltshire, near Swindon, and I was able to do a production of The World Goes Round outside in an outdoor venue at the Barn Theatre in Cirencester. And that was a wonderful experience because it was sort of, although it wasn't a very long contract, reaffirmed me in what I love. And I've also completed a sort of a diploma in teaching English as a foreign language, and I'm trying to look into doing that online. But doing that contract and singing these songs by Candor and Ebb made me realize that, you know, what we do as actors and performers is viable, is incredibly important for the community. People showing up at those performances and recognizing that they were hungry for it as much as we were. And I think that while we talk about what's happening in the world right now, it's necessary to recognize the validity in the arts, and saying that if we didn't have books and music and theater and television, like, these past 6 months would have been even worse than they have been, you know?
Yeah.
So I was lucky in that I got to do an outdoor production during this time.
You said it's reaffirmed for you that that your love of it has sort of having a bit of maybe downtime or time away from it, and then having that, I don't know what my question is really, but has that made a difference to actually have some time away as well?
Yeah, I think when you become an actor or any sort of freelance performer, you expect long periods of unemployment. And I think that, you know, I've experienced that, and many have experienced that. There are very few people I know who have been lucky enough to not experience that. I think whenever you have long stints of unemployment, when you come back to it, it does very often reaffirm your love for it. I think the biggest change in the last 6 months is that everybody's been unemployed at the same time. So you're not even getting to support your friends in the same way, or seeing your friends in shows, and you're not even going to auditions because there are no auditions. And you start to, especially when you hear, not to be overly political by any means, but when you hear people in the government describing your entire industry as a non-viable industry, you begin to question your life choices and saying, well, actually, you know, have the last 15 years of my life been a complete waste of my time? And I think that is just not true. And I think when you come back to doing those things and you recognize that it's not true, when you see the hunger that people have for it as well.
And that we've been so lucky in the last few months that there have been so many things online and for free, even when we couldn't have things in person at all. And I know that sort of the National Theatre and the Royal Ballet and, you know, all sorts of companies have been putting out streaming plays and shows, and also the Library Hub has been streaming now some live shows, which you are actually going to be part of soon, I think.
Yes, I'm very excited to be part of it. The Halloween show that is happening on Halloween, the 31st, and you can go to the Upper Norwood Library Facebook page in order to make an optional donation to that, and get the link to watch that live or after the fact. I'll be performing with several other West End performers. I'm really excited about that. We've got all sorts of things from Wicked, things from Nightmare Before Christmas, things from all sorts of Halloween and spooky shows and spooky television shows and whatnot.
Amazing. How did you get dragged into this?
Well, it's funny you should say dragged into it, because I was dragged into it because of Daniel Stockton, who I met in drag. Not me, him. Although, I don't know, maybe that's in the future for me. He was playing the Dame in a panto that we did together in Basildon, Snow White. And if your viewers know or have heard of Daniel Stockton, he's fantastic. He's a wonderful performer. And he was running the cafe at the Upper Norwood Library before this hit, and it produces lots of West End concerts as well. And so he asked me if I would come and do this one, and I said, absolutely, of course, anything for Daniel. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to doing that.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to that very much. I think the sort of green screen and costumes and props and all sorts, I believe.
It's going to be an experience unlike any other. I can assure that. So
amazing. And there'll be a small audience in the room, I think, as well. How does that affect you? Have you noticed, have you done things without an audience? I know some people have been doing just kind of live streaming just on their own in the sitting room, which has also been amazing. But does it make a big difference to you whether there's an audience or not?
I think the fact that we're able to have sort of that small group of people, that 20 group audience, that 20-person audience, is actually really valuable, because when you're doing things, for example, doing even just self tapes where you're being asked to do musical theater pieces on a tape, it can be very confusing, because what you're used to doing on camera is very different from what you're used to doing on stage, just on a very basic sort of skill level. And sometimes when you're doing singing, if for example, on camera, you finish and it's just kind of, there's nothing. It's just a complete silence. And you're sitting there going, oh, great. But having even, just a group of people there just to feel the encouragement in the room, I think will be really valuable. And I look forward to them being there. And I'm so glad that they were able to make it work in a socially distanced way and make sure everybody feels safe and like they can really enjoy themselves.
Yeah, amazing. It's going to be really fab, I think. In terms of kind of the general situation at the moment, we've just kind of touched on some of the difficulties with the arts. I've got a comment from Jane who says, lovely to hear such positive comments about how the arts are helping us through lockdown. So yes, I think it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to take away for a day kind of all books, music, TV, films, and just see how people coped without that for 24 hours, I think. That's my comment,
absolutely.
Not hers.
No, absolutely. Jane, I think Jane's comment about positivity, I think that holds. I think, yeah, you're right. I would love to see how people would have done. Well, not love to, but I can only imagine how people would have fared if they didn't have the arts. So yeah, I think that's very astute.
And what would you say to people who are wanting to support the arts? Because obviously there's a huge amount of worry at the moment about whether the industry will actually recover at all. And it's lovely that we've got things like the Halloween Spooktacular at the Library Hub, where there is able to be, as you said, a small audience there, and we're also able to live stream it. So I think there are starting to be more kind of options for the moment, and fingers crossed that carries on. But there's obviously huge question marks over whether venues survive and whether performers can find enough work, because there's even fewer jobs now than there were before. So whether the industry actually will survive and how long it will take to recover if it does. So what would you say to people who are wanting to support the arts at the moment through this time?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think first of all, I think that the industry as we know it may not survive in the way that we think it will. But I think that as creatives, we will always survive, and we always have. And I think saying the industry, if it collapses or any of these things, I think if tomorrow the entire world banking system and financial system was wiped out and capitalism completely fell, you'd still have actors and singers and musicians playing their instruments. We're like cockroaches. You can't get rid of us so easy. And we will do things. As to your second point on how to support the institutions that are so important, particularly in the United Kingdom, I think that if you hold outstanding tickets to maybe that West End show or that touring show that has now been cancelled or been rescheduled due to the crisis, I would ask you to please not ask for that money back just yet. I know that it's been 6 months, but I think that allowing a lot of these venues to reschedule tours or to transfer your ticket to a different production, even if it's maybe not the first thing that you wanted to see, I would urge people to not ask for their money back for tickets at the moment, because at some of these venues, that money, being able to repay that would completely decimate all of they'd have to liquidate everything in order just to pay people back. I think also if you have the opportunity to donate to online events, I would suggest donating whatever you can. If it's £5, if it's £2, if it's £20, please do that. And if you see, venues, your local venues, particularly places that you've been leaning on and that you've been finding a sense of community in, if those places are struggling, see what you can do for those places financially, or even if it's just, calling, knocking on doors, and then standing back at a safe distance. But, just doing what you can to help the local venues around you.
Amazing. Thank you. Just following on from something else you said a bit earlier, you said that you'd been getting a diploma in teaching English as a foreign language. And something that came up the other day, I think it was yesterday actually, with Siobhan Harrison, who's also going to be in the Halloween concert. But we were talking about transferable skills and how obviously actors already are generally doing lots of different jobs and using lots of skills that are transferable, and the whole sort of question of viability, sort of, we're already doing those things. So what are there any particular skills that you've found are transferable between your acting career and kind of looking at the diploma for teaching English?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in addition to doing that diploma, I'm also a personal trainer and a yoga instructor, which is another entire industry that was wiped out by COVID. So I've actually retrained twice now to do various different things. So this sort of myth about retraining and finding a job, I think, is exactly that. It's a myth. But I think that we have incredible amounts of transferable skills. You can hold the attention of people in a room. I think that a lot is to be said about that. I think many actors, people seem to think that actors are uneducated, but actors are incredibly educated people who understand literature, they understand psychology, they understand history, they understand how to speak and how to get their points across. They understand debating. We're not an unskilled populace. And dancers understand the human body in a way that many people can never understand the human body. Musicians, singers, music is mathematics, and you can teach. If your brain is good at music, then you're also naturally inclined to be able to teach math and understand math. And I think we oftentimes get put into a bracket of unskilled workforce when actually we have so many transferable skills. We do all of our own admin, we do our own taxes,
publicity.
We are running our own marketing, we are in charge of our whole business, and we are only successful as our business is. So I think that we have an incredible number of transferable skills, and I think that's definitely a good question, and it's something that I'm glad that you are talking about.
I would actually add on maybe 3 more things that you sort of touched on but didn't say specifically, which is self-motivation, not always easy, self-discipline, because you're so often, as you said, all those extra things, the admin and the publicity and all those marketing, all those things we have to motivate ourselves to do, and then also just constantly learning, I think, and looking for things, an interest in always learning more and always trying to be better. So yeah, cool. That's really great. Thank you. I'm glad I asked that question too. So I think I just have a couple of other things that one thing that I want to go back to, and one other thing I particularly wanted to ask. So you mentioned this film that is not yet being shown in the UK, but in the hope that one day it will be. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about that? Presumably this was made, you did the filming for it before March.
Yeah, actually we did the filming for it back in 2018, and it was supposed to get its release at South by Southwest Film Festival in March, and the festival was cancelled due to COVID-19. And so the cinematic release that it deserved, and it's called The Outpost, and it's a film by Millennium Pictures and directed by Rod Lurie, and it's a real life. It's based on real life events surrounding the Afghan war. It is a war film. It's rated US rated R. I think that's maybe 17 over here. It's it's quite intense, but it is actually quite an in-depth and stirring film. It's not just sort of your typical big explosions, etc., etc. And it was sort of denied its cinematic release due to that. So it released on iTunes and streaming sites in the United States. recently has been released on Netflix. It's currently #2 in America, and is also doing very well. It's in the top 10 in Australia and also in Scandinavia. And hopefully we'll see it be released in the United Kingdom before the end of 2020. I certainly hope so. I think it deserves it. So, but if you happen to be anywhere that's not the United Kingdom and you want to watch it, it's called The Outpost and it's available on Netflix.
Amazing. Cool. Thanks. We should look out for that. And I think we're sort of getting towards the end of our time. So my final question really is, what advice or tips would you give to people who are maybe starting out in the industry at the moment? It's obviously a really unfortunate time for people who are. So what support maybe would you give them?
Yeah, I think my answer to this has actually probably changed over the pandemic, because what I would have normally told people before this is, do what you do best rather than trying to do what somebody else does, but not as good as them. Mm-hmm. That advice, I think, still for me still holds. I think it's very much being true to yourself in that way. Mm. I think now, though, the most important thing is to don't measure yourself by someone else's success and by what else is happening in the world and whatever is left of the industry. I think it's important that with the mental health struggles that many in this country are facing right now and all over the world are facing, that we're kind to ourselves and we recognize that we can only do so much in this time. And so I would say, be kind to yourself and allow yourself to do whatever you can without comparing yourself to other people.
I mean, I think I would say that is always good advice, but particularly right now, hard not to kind of look at the few people who are maybe prominent at the moment and worry about that. Just since you mentioned mental health, actually, just detouring slightly, do you have any, how have you looked after your mental health in the last few months? Just if you don't mind my asking.
That's a good question. I do a lot of exercise and I do yoga almost daily. I think that's a massive part of what keeps my brain in a good place. And leaving the house and walking the dog for me is a very important thing as well, because it's a change of scenery. And also practicing what I do. I know that might sound, but if you play an instrument, picking that instrument up and playing it and singing for yourself, not for somebody else, not because you're preparing a piece for an audition, but actually singing or playing or reading a monologue or reading a play just because you want to, sometimes actually makes you go, wow, I love this so much, and it's such an affirming experience that the reason we do this, and it's because something about it in our past lifted us up and made us feel like giants. And I think now rediscovering what that is really important and can be really useful.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna have to stop there, but it's been really brilliant to chat to you. And I can't wait to see the Halloween concert. So I'll see you there. Thank you very much indeed. Just before we finish, a couple of things for you guys who are watching. I'm sure you know by now that we have just a huge amount going on at the Library Hub. Please do check out our website because all of the updates are kind of on there. We'd still love to have more people get involved in All Alone Together. This is our Arts Council funded project looking at the effect of the pandemic on our local community. There's a very, very short survey. It's just 4 questions on the website. We'd love to have as many people as possible fill that in. And if you're interested in being part of the oral history side of this, then I would absolutely love to interview you to be part of our podcast. So the interviews take about an hour, and then edited sections of that are used to create the podcast, which is, I think, now live. So you can actually listen to the first episode on our website, which is really cool, or soon anyway. Rin's shaking head at me. Not yet. Very soon, you will be able to listen to members of our community in their own words, in their own voices, telling us about experiences from the pandemic. So please do get involved with that. The survey is really short. And then the other thing to say is just that we are always looking for guests to come on this show. So if you've got something you'd like to chat about on a live stream, please do get in touch with us at galina.rin@unlt.org. I think that's it for me today, except to say please do put 6 o'clock on the 31st of October in your diary for the Halloween Spooktacular live stream concert from the Library Hub. It really is going to be a spectacular. And George, thank you so much for chatting to me today. I can't wait to see the concert on the 31st.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Enjoy the sunshine, everybody. It seems to be a bit today still, so enjoy that. Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.